chosen one. Lock your attention on this message right now. Whatever thought just tried to pull you away, let it go. This moment is more important than you realize. The enemy has been working overtime this week for one reason and one reason only. He knows what is about to shift in your life, and he has been desperate to make sure you miss it. It all changes now. The stagnation, the confusion, the silence where answers were supposed to be. But hear this clearly. It is not changing because of coincidence. It is changing because of what you have done, what you have carried, and what you have refused to quit on, even when every part of you wanted to. Think back to that moment this week, when you almost did not show up for yourself. Maybe you almost skipped this. Maybe you almost stayed in that spiral of thought that told you nothing was going to change. But something inside you moved anyway. You did not know it then, but that movement was divine. That small act of showing up was the moment the assignment against your life began to collapse. You did not stumble into this message. You were escorted here. The algorithm did not bring you here. God did. This is a divine appointment that was written before the foundations of the earth were laid. You are not sitting here by chance. You are standing at a threshold that has your name on it. Do not leave this message early. Your future self is begging you to stay, because if you walk away now, you walk away from the verdict that was prepared specifically for you, for this season, for this exact moment in your story. In the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the legal decree that exposes and cancels the specific assignment the enemy launched against your mind this week. I am going to walk you through the moment you thought was your greatest failure and show you exactly why it was your most powerful weapon. And at the end, I am going to give you a declaration that seals this season shut, so that what has been tormenting you cannot follow you into what is next. Stay until the very last second. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere has not just been heavy, it has been suffocating. Like something is pressing down on every area of your life at the same time, and no matter how much you pray, no matter how much you push, nothing seems to move. Maybe you have been lying awake at 3 in the morning this week, eyes open in the dark, heart racing, running through every decision you have made, every door that has not opened, every prayer that felt like it hit the ceiling and came back down unanswered. Or maybe it has been quieter than that. Maybe you have been going through the motions during the day, smiling at the right moments, saying the right things, but on the inside feeling completely hollow, like something essential has gone missing and you cannot name what it is. You feel suspended, like you are standing in a corridor between who you were and who you were promised to become, and someone has locked the door on both ends. And in that suspension, in that corridor, the enemy has been whispering a very specific lie. Listen to your own thoughts right now, because you have heard this lie this week. He has been telling you that the reason you are stuck is because of you. He has been replaying a specific moment in your mind. Maybe that moment when you reacted instead of resting. Maybe that moment when you chose silence and then wondered if your silence was actually cowardice. Maybe that moment when you loosened your grip on something you had been holding with everything you had. The accuser has been telling you that moment was failure. He has been telling you that because of it the blessing has been delayed, that the clock has reset, that you have to earn your way back to the place you were before. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about where you are right now. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose." All things, not the comfortable things, not the clean things, not the moments you are proud of, all things. That moment you are ashamed of, that moment you think disqualified you, that moment the enemy will not stop replaying. It is working together. It has been recruited into your story by a God who does not waste a single chapter. The enemy is trying to convince you that you are in a cycle. He wants you to believe you are going around the same mountain again because of your own failure. But that is a lie. You are not in a cycle. You are in a conclusion. The heaviness you feel right now is not the weight of punishment. It is the weight of finality. It is what it feels like when something ancient is being uprooted at the foundation level, so that it cannot grow back. The pressure is not a sign that you are failing. The pressure is a sign that something is ending. That moment you thought was your weakness was not a mistake. It was a strategy that heaven authored and the enemy never saw coming. You did not delay your destiny, you just activated it. And I need you to stay with me here, because what I'm about to walk you through is not a motivational speech. This is not encouragement wrapped in spiritual language to make you feel better for a few hours before life pulls you back under. What this is a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. They show you exactly what's there, even the parts you've been carefully avoiding. Imagine holding a polished obsidian shard up to your face. It reflects the unvarnished truth, the shadow play of your soul, the contours of your deepest fears and unacknowledged strengths. This isn't about adding glitter to your current reality. It's about excavating the bedrock upon which your true self is meant to stand. Some messages don't just inform, they activate. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, a tremor beneath the surface of your being, a resonance that felt like a tuning fork struck against the core of your existence, you may be ready to receive the Chosen One's blueprint. This sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. It's a celestial map charting the unique contours of your spiritual journey, illuminated by the wisdom of ages. It also comes with the full audiobook, so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or quiet moments with God, allowing the divine patterns to seep into the very marrow of your bones. And for those called to speak His truth, those with a burning ember of prophecy within, you'll also receive Activating Your Prophet Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those carrying a prophetic assignment, a spiritual compass for navigating the often turbulent currents of divine communication. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. This is not a fleeting whisper, it's a clarion call to awaken the dormant power within you. Now let's go deeper. Let us plunge into the unfathomable depths of the divine mystery that has brought you to this very moment. There is a reason this moment found you. Not a coincidence, not an algorithm designed by mortal hands. There is something orchestrating your attention right now, a divine hand guiding your gaze that is far more intentional, far more purposeful than you've been willing to believe. Think of it as a cosmic breadcrumb trail, leading you exactly where you need to be, guided by a love that predates time itself. And the barrier, the real one, the formidable wall that has stood between you and your promised land, isn't the enemy you've named, the external forces you've so readily blamed. It isn't the person who hurt you, their words like poisoned arrows. It isn't the door that slammed shut, the echo of opportunity lost, or the season that felt like it swallowed you whole, a desolate wasteland of despair. The barrier that has kept you cycling through the same frustrating patterns, the same soul-wearying delays, the same tantalizing, almost breakthroughs that always seem to evaporate like morning mist, is something far closer to home. It resides not in the external world, but within the sacred architecture of your own consciousness. It is the story you've been telling yourself about who you are, about your inherent worth, and about what you deserve to receive from the universe, from life, from the divine. This internalized narrative, often whispered in the quiet corners of your mind, has become the invisible cage that keeps you bound. Think about Elijah. This was a man who commanded the heavens, a prophet whose voice was a thunderclap. He was a man who called fire down from heaven, a spectacle of divine power that silenced the doubters. A man who stood before kings and empires without flinching, his presence a palpable force of righteous authority. A man whose prayer, a fervent cry to the Almighty, shut the rain for 3 agonizing years, demonstrating his intimate connection to the Creator's will. And yet, just 1 chapter after the greatest, most awe-inspiring miracle of his ministry, standing triumphant on Mount Carmel, the false prophets vanquished, he was under a broom tree, a solitary figure bowed in despair, asking God to let him die. Not because the enemy Jezebel had suddenly amassed an insurmountable army, not because God had abandoned him, his presence having suddenly receded like a tide, but because Elijah had begun to listen to a different voice, an insidious whisper that told him he was the only one left, a solitary candle in a vast darkness, that his life's effort was utterly wasted, that the immense cost of his obedience was simply too great to bear. He was exhausted, yes, the weight of his spiritual warfare pressing down on him like a physical burden. But the deeper, more insidious issue was the covenant he had unconsciously made with isolation. He had convinced himself in the crucible of his trials that his suffering had made him singular in the most destructive way, not chosen for a unique purpose, but abandoned to a lonely fate. His perceived solitude became the narrative that defined him, and God, in his infinite grace and profound understanding, didn't rebuke him. God didn't chastise him for his despair. God fed him twice. An angel ministered to him, providing sustenance, a divine nourishment that restored not just his body, but his spirit. And then, only after Elijah had rested, only after something essential in his physical and spiritual being had been restored, God asked him a question he already knew the answer to, a question designed not for information, but for revelation. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Not as a pointed accusation, not as a judgment on his despair, but as a gentle yet profound invitation to name it, to bring the hidden pain into the light, to say out loud what the soul had been carrying in secret, festering in the darkness of unspoken grief. It was an invitation to excavate the truth buried beneath the layers of exhaustion and fear. That question is alive and potent in this moment. It echoes in the sacred space between the breaths you are taking right now. What are you doing here? Not in this video, not on this platform, but in this season of your life, in this particular chapter of your soul's unfolding. What are you carrying? What invisible weight do you bear that you were never meant to carry alone? What have you been calling your identity, the very essence of who you are, that was actually just your deepest wound speaking, masquerading as truth? Your wound has been dictating your direction. Because here is what most people miss entirely, the subtle deception that renders so many paralyzed. The lie doesn't always sound like a lie. It doesn't arrive with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it sounds like wisdom, like prudent counsel born of hard-won experience. Sometimes it sounds like discernment, a holy caution that keeps you from rash decisions. Sometimes it whispers in the guise of protection, a soothing balm meant to shield you from further hurt. Don't get your hopes up. You've been disappointed before, remember. Be realistic, keep your feet on the ground. And you, in your earnestness, have been calling that maturity. You've been calling that seasoned faith. But what if it was actually fear? A primal instinct dressed in the sophisticated language of experience. What if the very thing you thought was keeping you grounded, tethered to reality, was actually the invisible force that was keeping you from ascending into the fullness of your divine potential? What if your realism was simply a veiled paralysis? And this leads us to something that will likely surprise you. A truth that often feels like a jolt of lightning when it finally lands, when it penetrates the deepest chambers of your understanding. Stay with me. Allow this truth to unfurl within you. The pattern underneath all of this, the tangled thread that connects every false start, every frustrating season of delay, every moment where you were right at the precipice of something significant, something life-altering, and then somehow, inexplicably, found yourself back at the beginning, the starting line obscured by the same old fog. That pattern has a root, and the root, my friend, is not external. It never was. You've been engaged in a fierce battle with the branches, valiantly rebuking the visible symptoms, the manifestations of the problem. You've been tending to the fruit, only to find it bitter. But the root, the originating cause, has been sitting quietly, tenaciously, underneath everything, unseen, unfelt, yet relentlessly feeding the very cycle you are so desperate to break. It is the hidden engine of your stagnation. The root is an unspoken, deeply ingrained belief that your breakthrough, your divine appointment, requires your absolute perfection. That God is patiently waiting for you to get it fully right, to iron out every crease, to achieve an impossible standard before He will finally move on your behalf. that you somehow have to earn the moment to amass enough merit, enough spiritual currency, before the gates of your destiny will swing open. That somehow all of the suffering, all of the rigorous preparation, all of the silent years of being hidden, misunderstood, and overlooked, that was simply payment, a cosmic debt you've been accruing for something you still haven't fully qualified for yet. And so you keep working. You keep striving, pushing against an unseen resistance. You keep reaching, perpetually almost arriving yet never quite touching the destination. And the cycle continues, a self-perpetuating loop, not because God is withholding his favor. That is a divine impossibility, but because you, in your deeply held beliefs, are withholding it from yourself. You are the gatekeeper to your own breakthrough. Look at Moses. 40 years he spent in the wilderness. Not 40 days of testing, but 40 years of exile, of wandering, of internal recalibration. And when God finally, audaciously spoke to him from the midst of the burning bush, a spectacle of divine presence that ignited the very air around him, Moses didn't feel ready. He didn't step forward with bold confidence. He stuttered. He questioned. He offered every conceivable reason why someone else, anyone else, should go in his stead. He presented a litany of his own inadequacies. And what was God's response? The divine mandate that cut through all of Moses's self-doubt. I am, WHO, I am, now go. Not, let me wait until your confidence catches up to this calling. Not, I'll send you when you feel more equipped, when your doubts have been sufficiently vanquished. God sent him in the very midst of his inadequacy, his profound sense of unpreparedness, because the calling was never ever built upon Moses's limited human capability. It was built upon God's infinite, unshakable power. The vessel, no matter how flawed it may seem, doesn't determine the miracle. The divine source does. The miracle flows from the unfathomable capacity of the Creator, not the capacity of the created. And what's coming next? Stay with me, because this is the part that dismantles the cycle. The revelation that truly breaks the chains is the understanding about what you've been waiting for permission to do. You have been seeking an external validation that is already intrinsically yours. You've been waiting for a sign, a celestial billboard announcing your next step, for a green light from the universe, a celestial traffic signal to proceed, for a confirmation so undeniable, so blindingly clear that doubt would have no room left to breathe, no shadow in which to hide. And yes, some of that waiting, some of that seeking of signs has been wisdom, a prudent pause in the grand symphony of life. But some of it, if you dare to be brutally honest with yourself, if you can face the unvarnished truth in the quiet chambers of your heart, has been hiding. It has been waiting, dressed up as preparation, a comfortable camouflage. It has been delay masquerading as discernment, a subtle sidestep from the arena of action. You've prayed for doors to open, for divine intervention to carve a path, when God has already placed the intricate, perfectly fashioned key in your hand, waiting for you to recognize it. You've asked for direction, for a roadmap, when the path illuminated by the divine light has been stretching out before you for longer than you are comfortable admitting, waiting for your willingness to simply take the first step. Because true movement, the kind that shifts paradigms and reshapes destinies, requires surrender. And surrender is a terrifying prospect, a leap into the unknown, when you spent so much of your life building your identity around being in control of at least something, anything. When your whole existence has felt uncertain, unstable, and irrevocably outside of your control, the one thing you could always control was whether or not you stepped forward, whether or not you dared to try. And if you never fully try, if you always keep a part of yourself held back, you never fully fail. And if you never fully fail, you never have to confront the deepest, most primal fear that lurks within the human psyche, that maybe, after all of this striving, all of this waiting, all of this earnest effort, you're not who God said you are, that the divine pronouncements were a mistake. But here's where it goes deeper. And I need you to feel this next part not just with your mind, but with the very fibers of your being. This is where the core of the illusion is revealed. That fear, the gnawing, persistent fear that you are not who he said you are, that the divine assessment was flawed, is not humility. It has been living within you, a parasitic tenant under the insidious disguise of humility. True humility is not self-deprecation. It is an accurate assessment of your place in the divine order. True humility says, I am not the source of all power. I am not the creator, but I will still be the willing and surrendered vessel through which the divine can act. What you have been carrying, that pervasive sense of inadequacy, is not humility. It is a profound refusal to receive. And a refusal to receive, a turning away from the divine gifts and affirmations offered, is a quiet yet devastating rejection of everything God has already declared over your life, every blessing he has already bestowed. It is saying no to the divine yes. Think of Gideon. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, Gideon wasn't in a place of strength or readiness. Gideon was hiding. He was threshing wheat in a winepress, underground, out of sight, deliberately making himself invisible, seeking refuge from a world that felt too overwhelming. And the angel didn't say, "Why are you hiding, Gideon? What are you afraid of?" He didn't address Gideon's current state of diminished being. He said, "The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor." He spoke to what Gideon was becoming, to the divine potential lying dormant within him, not to what Gideon was passively doing in his fear. He called him by his destiny, by the name of his future glory, not by the temporary circumstances of his present struggle. And Gideon's immediate instinctual response, "But Lord, if the Lord is truly with us, then why has all of this hardship, all of this suffering happened to us?" His pain, his lived experience, had written a faulty theology within him, a narrative that said suffering is irrefutable proof of abandonment, that hardship is a sign that God has turned his face away. And that theology, that silent, unspoken, deeply embedded belief that your hardship is concrete evidence that heaven has forgotten you, that you are on your own in this vast universe, that has been one of the most insidious, most sophisticated lies the enemy has ever managed to plant inside a chosen person. Because it takes your greatest wound, your deepest pain, the very experiences that were meant to forge you, and it twists them, using them as damning evidence against your own calling, against your divine purpose. It transforms the very suffering that was meant to be shaping you, refining you like a divine sculptor, chipping away at stone, into a perceived rejection, a sign that you are unworthy rather than what it truly is, a crucible of refinement. Coming up, the final layer of revelation, the one that most chosen people, caught in the previous stages of misunderstanding, never managed to see. And it is the one that, once it finally shifts, once it is embraced, has the power to change everything else in your spiritual landscape. It is the great unlock. But before we arrive at that profound juncture, you need to sit with this. You need to allow this truth to settle into the very core of your being. The suffering you have endured was not a mistake, a random cosmic error. The delay you have experienced was not a sign of abandonment, a divine oversight. The obscurity, the years spent in the shadows, was not a punishment, a consequence of some perceived failing. There is a season in every significant life, in every destiny-laden journey, where heaven intentionally places a person out of public sight, away from the clamor of the world, not because they are forgotten, but because what is growing within them, what is being divinely cultivated, cannot possibly grow under the harsh glare of observation. A seed does not become a mighty tree in front of an eager, scrutinizing audience. It requires the darkness, the nurturing embrace of the earth. It grows in the dark, hidden, pressured by the soil around it, completely unseen by the world. And then, at the divinely appointed moment, when the time is perfect, when the internal structure is complete, it breaks through the surface with unstoppable force, and nobody who sees the magnificent tree can ever fully comprehend the arduous, miraculous journey of the seed that preceded it. You, my dear friend, have been the seed, and you've been grieving, being underground, lamenting your time in the darkness when it is precisely underground, in the hidden places, in the unseen processes, that transformation truly takes root and flourishes. That is where the miracle is born. Now, here is the part that you likely did not expect. The revelation of the thing that has actually been blocking your breakthrough, the true impediment. Not the enemy you've been fighting, not your past trauma that you've allowed to define you, not the people who failed you, not even your unbelief in the way you have conventionally understood it, as a simple lack of faith. The hidden root beneath all of it, the deepest knot that has kept you bound, is misplaced loyalty. You have remained fiercely loyal to a version of yourself that God, in His divine wisdom and foresight, buried a long time ago. You have unconsciously protected that old identity, the wounded one, the overlooked one, the one who learned to survive by making themselves small, by shrinking their light to avoid notice, because that version of you kept you safe. That version of you knew how to manage pain, how to navigate the familiar terrain of suffering. That version of you had a system, a predictable framework for existence. And walking away from that system, from that comfortable, albeit limiting framework, even into something infinitely more divine, feels at its core like dying. It feels like stepping off a cliff into the abyss. But that's precisely the point, isn't it? That's the divine paradox. Paul articulated it with profound clarity. You have to die to live. Not metaphorically, not as an inspirational platitude. Actually, something within you has to be willing to stop breathing, to cease its familiar rhythm, so that something new, something divinely breathed into you by the Creator, can finally move and manifest without obstruction. It's a spiritual rebirth, a shedding of the old skin. The old you was not your enemy. It was your survival mechanism, your shield against the storms. But survival and destiny are not living at the same address. They are separate realities, mutually exclusive realms. And you cannot inhabit both houses, live fully in both states of being at the same time. You must choose which dwelling you will occupy. This is the moment the shift begins, not next week, not when the circumstances miraculously change to your liking, not when the fractured relationship finally heals, or the financial foundation miraculously stabilizes, or the long-awaited door finally swings open with a fanfare. Right now, in this very moment. Because transformation, the profound alchemy of the soul, never waits for ideal conditions. It does not reside in a future utopian landscape. It happens inside the very conditions you've been desperately waiting to escape, within the crucible of your present reality. It is forged in the fire. You are not behind. You are not lagging in the divine race. You are not too broken, too damaged, too fractured to be used. You are not too late to step into your destiny. You are not too much, overflowing with a perceived excess that disqualifies you, and you are certainly not too little, lacking the essential qualities needed for your assignment. You are precisely, perfectly, at the sacred threshold of the very thing God has been meticulously preparing you for, orchestrating your entire life's journey to bring you to this very precipice. And the only thing, the sole impediment standing between you and the unfolding of that divine purpose, is your willingness, your conscious decision to release the story that has been telling you, on repeat, that you weren't ready. Place your hand on your heart right now. Feel the steady rhythm of your own life force, the divine spark that animates you. And speak this with me, out loud if you can. Because there is immense power in the vibration of declaration, in the sound of your voice affirming divine truth. I release the story that said I was too late. I release the belief that my suffering was abandonment. I release every false identity I built just to survive what I never should have had to carry alone. I break agreement with the lie that my breakthrough requires my perfection. I receive what God declared over me before I was formed, my calling, my purpose, my authority, my place in His grand design. I surrender the old version of me that kept me safe but kept me small, and I step forward. Not because I feel ready, not because every doubt has been vanquished, but because the one who called me is already there, His presence walking with me, His strength empowering me. I am not forgotten. I am not disqualified. I am not finished. I am at the glorious beginning of what God has been building all along. And I walk into it now. If this message confirmed something your spirit already knew, a truth that resonated deep within your soul, don't let this sacred encounter end here. Share this profound revelation with someone else who needs to hear it, someone else who is standing at their own threshold of transformation. Leave a comment below and tell me, what is the one thing you are releasing today? What old story are you choosing to let go of? Your words carry immense weight and power. Use them to solidify your intention. And if you want to go even deeper, to unravel the intricate tapestry of your calling, to understand the profound purpose woven into your suffering, and to grasp what God is actively activating in this potent season of your life, the link in the first pinned comment below holds something that was specifically crafted, divinely designed, for exactly where you are right now. It is a key, waiting for you to turn it.